Are you in the process of buying a home and worried about paying more for that home than it's actually worth, or potentially being underwater in just a couple of years because the value of that home has dropped? Well, that's a reasonable concern. In today's video, we're actually going to talk about that in more detail, along with the idea of price reductions. I have a lot of viewers at the moment reaching out to me saying that they're seeing price reductions in their market. And immediately they think, well, because these homes are being reduced in value, that means the housing market has changed, and I'm now able to offer substantially less for that home than maybe it was worth a couple of months ago because of that price reduction, because it's been sitting on the market. Well, we're actually going to dive into what that means. A lot of people out there at the moment have a misbelief on what a price reduction actually is, because we've had a crazy housing market for the last 18 months or so, and a market where we didn't really see a lot of price reductions. People believe that now that price reductions are back, that it's this anomaly, that it's this new thing that's never happened before, when in fact a market with price reductions is completely normal. In fact, in any thriving market, we've seen price reductions. They are just more obvious now because, of the changes that you're seeing in housing. And we're going to dive into that in more detail. We're actually going to talk about how to approach houses that have been reduced in price, and how to look at the housing market as a whole as you move forward, right? We have to understand how that home was priced to begin with in order to see if that price reduction is even something to concern ourselves with, right? Is it something that's telling us that the market is dropping? Or is it merely telling us that that seller had no idea what they were doing to begin with, and there's really no correlation to the housing market at all? But before we do that, I want to take a minute and ask a favor. If you're new to me, new to my channel, it's all about real estate, helping guide you through that home buying process. So do me a favor, if you find any value in this content at all, give me a thumbs up. Consider subscribing if you want to stay updated on everything real estate related. So in order to get started in today's video, let's talk about how a seller typically prices their home, because I think it's important to understand how a seller prices their home in order to understand how a price reduction works, or a price improvement, however you want to look at it, a price drop or what have you. So a seller, when pricing their home, typically is looking at other comparable sales in their neighborhood, right? If you're in a tract that has, model match homes, similar bedroom, bathroom, lot sizes, it's pretty easy to get an idea of the value of your home, considering it has the same view and, same location, all of that good stuff. In a more rural area or in luxury properties, it's a little more difficult to price those homes out, because in a lot of cases, it's what somebody's willing to pay, because it's hard to justify the value of that home, just because there's nothing really to compare it to. Sometimes you have farmland, sometimes you have these extravagant homes in Beverly Hills and what have you that are on acres, and there's really nothing like it. And it comes down to what somebody is willing to pay, and so a seller has to decide when they price their home where they're going to price it. And if you have that comparable sale that's sold down the street, you have a number to base it off of. In some cases, a seller is just putting out a price that they feel is fair and reasonable based on the upgrades that they've done to the home, based on the time they've spent in the home, whatever, right? A seller has an opinion of the value of that home. And in most cases, they bring a real estate agent in to help justify that value, or the agent is there to tell them the value of the home based on, comparable sales or features or what have you. Basically, what I'm getting at here is, in a lot of ways, the seller is guessing what they think their home is worth. There's no hard facts. This isn't a one-size-fits-all approach in most cases, because a home is actually worth what somebody's willing to pay for it, regardless of what you think, what I think, what the seller thinks. It's what somebody is willing to pay. And so when a seller puts a price out there, a lot of times they're unsure if the market will bear that price or not. Now, again, if you have something to compare it to that just sold that's very similar, it's a little bit different, but a lot of homes out there don't have that. And so when you see a price reduction on a home, for example, you have to understand where that home was priced to begin with. Now, if it's a home that was priced at fair market value, if it was identical to the one that just sold down the street in every way, and they're reducing their price less than the one that sold down the street, then it's something to pay attention to, right? That could be a change in your local housing market, a change in buyer demand, just a change in the feeling of the overall real estate market, if you will. But on the other hand, if you have a home that's been sitting on the market and it was priced too high to begin with, and you're seeing a price reduction on that home, that's not really anything to concern yourself with, right? Because that home was never fairly priced to start. And so by them reducing their price, they're just getting it close to fair market value. And that's not really a sign of a change in the market. It's just a sign that the seller's coming to grips with the fact that their home is overvalued and that in order to sell it, they may need to reduce the price. Now, if you're seeing, one area of the market where there's a ton of that, again, something to pay attention to. But when you look at the broad scope of the real estate market and you're seeing price reductions out there, don't just assume that the market's changing. You have to understand where those reductions are coming from. Like I mentioned a moment ago, if they're on properties that are priced correctly to begin with, then it could be an overall change in the sentiment of the housing market. But on the other hand, if they're overpriced, because there are a lot of sellers out there shooting for the moon on price, thinking that their homes are, better than the one down the street that just sold, and they want to price it well above that price because their home is unique or better, and they can't sell it, and so now you're seeing a reduction on that. That's not really something to pay attention to. In fact, I'm seeing a lot of it in my market where there are homes selling close to $2 million or listed at $2 million, and they're sitting, and they're overpriced in my opinion. When I saw them come on the market to start with, I could tell you those homes will never sell at that price. Now, 6-8 months ago, they might have, right? And that's what people are comparing this to. A couple of months ago, you had a different sentiment in the market, and things are starting to change a little bit and get back to the trend line, if you will. They're not varying so high above fair market value, and you're not having as many offers and as much demand. And so people take that into account along with the price drops and automatically think that there's this huge change happening. So if you're considering writing an offer on one of these properties, we're going to talk about how to approach it right now. But don't just assume because there's a price reduction on a property that seller has to sell that property, or that you're able to offer way less than where it's listed because they're reducing the price. You have to find out the motivation of that seller. And in each case, it might be a little bit different, right? Maybe that seller doesn't need to sell that property. And so they're just testing the waters. In some cases, maybe they do. Maybe they've already purchased another property. Maybe they're in a position where they can't continue to hold on to this and they want to sell it, and you're able to offer less. That's part of the approach in writing those offers, and that's what we're going to dive into right now. Considering making an offer on a property that's had the price reduced, or maybe it hasn't, maybe, right, it just came on the market and you're trying to figure out how to strategize in order to write an offer on that property, you're going to start by having your agent run the comparables on that property, right? How is it priced compared to other homes in the neighborhood? Now, I've talked about this in other videos, but it's important to understand, where that home is priced. Is it priced under market value to draw a bunch of offers so that it gets a lot of attention and potentially multiple offers and bids it up above the asking price? Or is it priced fair market value based on other homes that have sold? Or are they completely crazy and shooting for the moon on that property and there's nothing like it that's sold and just way overpriced? That's where you would start. And from there, once you have an idea of how it's priced, if you still want to make an offer on that property, the next thing you need to do is find out the motivation of that seller. Why is the seller leaving? Are they moving? Are they going somewhere? Have they already purchased something? Do they need to sell? A lot of this information will come up by having your agent contact the other agent, having a conversation. It goes a lot deeper than just the purchase price out there, right? A lot of times us as agents have relationships on the other side, or are trying to form relationships with the other side to help our offer stand out, to get information that helps our clients, in whatever way. And by contacting the person on the other side of that transaction to try to figure out their motivation, you can find out, why do you think it's sitting on the market? Ask the other agent that. And a lot of times they'll tell you, right? They might come out and like I said a minute ago, say, listen, they priced it higher than I thought they should to start, and start to give you more information. A lot of times you can get the information you need in order to help you make an offer. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't offer substantially less, because in some cases you might be able to do that. But what I want to get you to understand is that the overall sentiment of the housing market hasn't really changed. Supply is still really low, demand is still high. So even though supply has picked up in some cases, it's still down quite a bit from where we were a year ago today. So we're seeing inventory increase in a lot of markets, and we're seeing price reductions, but we're also seeing a lot of demand out there, right? We've talked about it in my market where new homes are coming to the market, but our inventory isn't building because people continue to put those homes in escrow and close on them. So if you're considering buying a house, you need to take that into consideration. This isn't the market to start offering way below the asking price in many cases. Now, if you're worried about, the overall sentiment of the housing market, potentially, buying now and the house being worth less later, I address that in this video here where I talk about buying now versus later. Check it out. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. But for now, I appreciate you taking the time to watch. I appreciate the support. Hope you have a good day. Bye-bye.